Good day, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. So, in a continued coverage of the ongoing civil war that's taking place in Ethiopia, we've had the opportunity to receive photographs of the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed allegedly on the Afar front inside of the conflict zone. And that photograph is fairly interesting, and it shows a couple of key points. One, it creates rumors about the possibility of drone use, and secondly, I think it shows you the political situation inside of Ethiopia itself. So, if you look at that photograph of Mr. Abiy Ahmed walking around, visiting troops and soldiers, you can clearly see he is in a military uniform. So he is projecting uh, the aura of a military man, and he is surrounded very closely by members of his presidential security force, or the Republican Guard, the new Republican Guard that was created by Abiy Ahmed. And you can see those crimson berets that those troops are currently wearing, and that would identify those personnel as members of the Republican Guard. But what strikes me interesting is that he is wearing a military uniform. He is not wearing any sort of civilian uniform or civilian dress. Even in other states around the world, when duly elected leaders visit its soldiers, they normally wear a more of a rustic civilian outfit. And Abiy Ahmed was wearing his full military attire. Now I understand he comes from a military background. However, I would say that that presentation of him wearing that uniform and being closely surrounded by his security detail, the Republican Guard, that would indicate a country that is heading towards tyranny. And he is positioning himself in a traditional manner that you would see in other parts of the world where dictators take complete control. And he very much reminds at least me of one of those dictators. Just in terms of the whole aspect of having the Praetorian Guard around him, the military uniform that he is currently wearing, it just does not project an image of a leader of a democracy, and probably that is what he is trying to signal, that Ethiopia is no longer a democracy, and he is the strong man in charge of the state of Ethiopia. Secondly, there has been continued talk about the drone issue, and in that photograph, you can also see what some people are calling a drone ground control station, specifically for the TB2, the infamous Turkish drone. So I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, that is not a TB2 ground control station. Feel free to look at the TB2 ground control station that is fully open source material, and if you look at the two systems very closely, you can clearly see that is not a TB2 ground control station. It's probably some sort of equipment for TV use, television use. But and then what I wanted to also do here quickly on my map is kind of compare and contrast the range of the TB2 drone, and how it would be more challenging for that system to operate inside of Ethiopia than the success that we saw in the Nagorno-Karabakh area. So first, let's go over and look at Nagorno-Karabakh, and let's see where these drones were quite possibly operating out of. So first, you have to understand that TB2 drone has a maximum range of about 150 kilometers, and it's about 80 miles. Okay, it is controlled by direct line of sight, meaning that there has to be communication systems that are somewhat elevated that then basically control the system. And if we go to our measurement tool and we go to, say, the closest airbase that could have been used inside of the Azeri area, and we go over to central Karabakh where the combat zone was, and we get over to Sushi, and we can see it's about 76 kilometers. And that would be in line with some of the operations that were taking place inside of the Armenian-Azeri conflict zone. So 73 kilometers as the bird flies. Okay, so again, that's well within the range of the TB2 drone. It also then gives it the ability to loiter for a certain period of time and look for targets. So if the TB2 drone flies the full 150 kilometers, obviously it's going to have to turn around and come back rather quickly, or it's going to simply run out of fuel and crash. But given the situation on the ground inside of Azerbaijan, that was the case. They were able to operate dozens of these drones, dozens and dozens, quite possibly, and other types of drones as well. So the battle space was littered with quite literally. Some people estimate the Azeris were operating hundreds of drones, and they were also being obviously directly supported by the Turks as well. And some of these drones were not even directly purchased by the Azeris, but were simply, it was the use of the Turkish Air Force that had loaned many of these systems to conduct strikes. And again, there was also the reported use of even F-16s and cruise missiles and a whole host of other systems that the Turks were using against the Armenians. So that really kind of created the environment where those drones were very successful. There was a lot of them very close to the battle space, and obviously operated by a country, a NATO-equipped country in the form of Turkey that's very close as well, just right across the street, basically. So if we go down to and we look at Ethiopia, and we look at the combat space inside of Afar, and we cruise down to possibly where these drones, let's say hypothetically they have the drones, okay, and I would say that these drones would probably be operating out of Dese. There is no real infrastructure to move these drones into Afar and have them operating directly out of the Afar region. And I mean, could they be operating out of Eritrea? Maybe, possibly, but let's have a look at this real quick. Let's look at the distance. Okay, so let's say hypothetically these TB2 drones are operating out of Eritrea, and we're gonna go and we're gonna draw our cursor over to the combat space, and we have already exceeded the maximum range for the TB2. So really, no way these TB2 drones are operating out of Eritrea. Okay, so we're going to then look at the next likely area of operations, and that would be to fly these drones into Addis Ababa and then move them or fly them directly into Dese. And this is another possibility. This is feasible, but again, remember we were looking at about 70 kilometers to the combat zone, and if we're talking about strikes in Afar, we're getting close. Okay, and you can clearly see if they were flying out of Dese. Now, if we go to the maximum range, they're not quite into Tigray yet, so their loitering time would be greatly diminished. But if we go back to the standard operating zone that occurred in the Azerbaijan, it's a little different. So that's about the operating area of Azerbaijan, or where it was during the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict. So the distances obviously are much greater in this Ethiopian conflict, which would reduce the capacity and the efficiency of these drones. Also, there would not be that many of them. So the big difference is the distances and the range, and the amount of drones that are probably on the ground and actually operating. And this is to insinuate that the drones are actually there. I do not believe those drones are currently there. I believe there's reconnaissance drones, but I don't believe the TB2 drone is currently operating inside of Ethiopia at this point. Could that change? Possibly. But right now, just given what I am seeing, and definitely the ground control station, or that TV station control truck that we saw, is not a drone ground control station. It just isn't. And I would also say it's highly speculative that, since the Turks have already said that they are not operating drones inside of Ethiopia, that they would not have let that photograph out, because that would completely contradict the statements out of the Turkish Foreign Office. So they could clearly say, the United States could say, hey, wait, you just said there was no drones operating, you were not supporting armed drones inside of Ethiopia, but here we have this picture which clearly indicates that is the case. So I just do not believe that is the case, and I do not believe they are currently operating in that area. But again, allegedly Abiy Ahmed was in Afar looking at the quote-unquote the Afar front. Remember, I would not identify the Afar front as really a front of operations. I mean, it is, but at the same time, it is not a major front. It is not the focus point of the Tigrayan Defense Force operations in their operational drive into the Amhara region. That is the main source of combat power that the Tigrayan Defense Forces are focusing in the region right now, and that is along the central and southeastern front of the Amhara region. The operations into the Afar region were both a diversion and efforts to disrupt Ethiopian supply, the state supply situation, and then obviously confront and chase down Ethiopian army units that were in Tigray, and intercept and destroy regional militias that were being moved into the Afar region that could have possibly threatened the Tigray region from an attack from the east. And that was effectively done. But is the TDF looking to permanently occupy the Afar region? I just don't see a reason for that, and don't think that would be a completely prudent move. Their main focus right now, obviously, is the Amhara region, and that continues as we speak. But again, just to quick synopsis, the information that I have and am receiving, there is not TB2 drones operating in the Afar region, and there are not combat drones operating in the Afar region as well. Could there be at some point in terms, and I would say that would most likely be Chinese support, because the Chinese do have what we would define as medium to long range or long range drones that are operated via satellite link, and that is important. Okay, remember, the TB2 drone is controlled by direct line of sight to a ground control station. The United States drones, such as the Reaper, the Predator, and soon to be deployed Avenger, these are all operated by satellite link, which gives them an incredibly long range over the horizon. Many times over the horizon, with 1,000-mile range and exceeding that. The TB2 drone with the ground control station, about 150 kilometers or 80 miles. The Chinese drones, possibly. Okay, they do have the satellite technology and the over horizon and the ability to project those drones 1,000 miles. But again, that would be something that would take some time for the Chinese to hand that technology over to Ethiopia, train the Ethiopian forces. That would be option one. Or the Chinese could possibly be looking to directly intervene. I'm not going to eliminate that, but it is something that is possible. And then obviously you have the UAE, who also uses the Chinese satellite-directed drone as well. And we know that they were instructed to stop their activity, and for all reason, we believe that has actually stopped. But that's all we have for today. I will update as the situation on the ground warrants. Have a great day, everybody.